Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Edges podcast. I'm your host, Brian Peters. Got an amazing human on this week to talk all things breath, Leo Daniel. He's the owner of Innate Strength, where you can find him at innatestrength.com. He's also a coach, performance coach, and an author. His book's coming out here in the next couple months, a beautiful book about the breath. But we talk all things breath, how to differentiate between breath work and breath training. We compare and contrast the Wim Hof method to the Oxygen Advantage method, Buteyko method, and then we go esoteric with it, how to stay on the edge and balance yourself to stay on the edge of your performance and also the edge of your recovery, just the balance of your life, how important the breath is, how it's sewn into your entire life. And if you can take control of it, you can lose the victim mentality and take a really awesome approach to controlling your life. But also we get into the eternal battle between modern society and how we're supposed to live in tune with nature. Very fun conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Boom. There it is.
We got you.
Damn, we already for those of you listening, we already started ripping, and I got back late last night, so I did not press start on the recording the first time around. But Leo, thank you for joining me.
We'll be on the same time zone eventually.
Yeah, well, they'll all merge together. But you know the drill a little bit. Where in your life right now are you chasing edges? Where are you learning? Where are you growing?
Nice. I would say my life is on the edge. I consider life is as you are today, it is the edge. And so in every moment you want to be in every part of your life, that's the most advanced you'll ever be. And then the next moment leads to an advancement of that. I know you might say, oh, that's a bit of a broad statement, Leo. Let's see where you go. So let's bring it back down to earth. Is much like an Olympic athlete will look at, peaking for a games over a 4-year cycle, and they do strength phases, they do skill phases, they do tactical phases, and then they do integration phases of their entire sport. I look at life that way. So professionally speaking, my edge at the moment is getting a book published, which I thought I'd have done about 3 years ago, but hey, yeah. That's okay. I'm on the edge of it.
Yeah, great things take time.
Exactly. I have, family life. I got 2 teenage daughters and a 5-year-old as well. I mean, that is the greatest edge of all is negotiating that part of life. And in terms of sport and in terms of activity, I just like to stay healthy. Judo is my main sport, and I coach in that. And I coach in Gaelic football as well. In the community, I love that, and just really enjoying life.
Yeah, and so I guess in your mental process there on, again, just staying on the edge, obviously that can be we'll say perceived as a stressor to stay in one constant state or strive for this state of the edge. And I see it a lot when you start talking about happiness, like, hey, I want to be happy, I want to be happy, I want to be happy, when really, so whenever you're not by your definition happy, there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be, and it becomes I'm not there, and you're always chasing kind of the carrot in that realm. So just intriguing to myself, like, how do you keep that healthy amount of friction on yourself?
Nice. So, and this is where I suppose I have a different perspective just because of my own life is. So I consider that we all have this center point, this center position where we can negotiate high stress and arousal and relaxation and recovery, right? And if you sit there in the middle where your biology can access both sides of the equation, well, then you can get to the very edge of your comfort zone, the edge of your learning zone. And where I like to be is not on the very edge, but on the inside edge, like a few inches just away from the edge. So I'm not about to tip over. It's like being on the edge of a cliff, right? If you walk on the very perimeter, you're on that edge of your nervous system and of life, and you're pushing. Eventually something's going to give. But if you're a few feet away, you still get to enjoy the vista. You still get to enjoy the experience. And then when the timing is right, you take a step closer. You feel what that's like. Maybe a wind picks up and you feel, oh, I got to back off here. That's where I like to be. Where I don't like to be is pushing over the edge, where I'm in a fear zone, where I'm in a high stress state, where I can't cope with what's going on in life, because I listen to the signals of my body, and I know it doesn't like it. And so I spend a little time there, but then I got to bounce back into that rest and recovery, which is, if you think of it like a circle, it's still another edge, but it's just, now's the time to rest and recover. Bounce back into the middle, and then you go for the next type of edge.
I like that. I like that circle analogy a lot, because circle in essence has all edges. I like that a lot. But in that world, I think it's incredibly logical. I have different verbiage in my own head, but I do I do pursue that same amount of tension on myself, but also, and that's why I also, for those of you listening, his book is it's a breathing book. It's about breathwork and the mental skills and the understanding the physiology inside of that. And we'll get to that in a second, just because I'm super excited to talk about all those things. Because I got a glance at one of the early edits of his book, and then intrigued me, just because some of the verbiage and even the images in there are just absolute dynamite, where I don't think a lot of people have bridged the gap between how powerful the breath is yet. And it from the glances I got, it looks like your book does that in sequential order, and how I think it should be presented, and how I present it myself. But in the world of that edge, obviously breath work makes some of the most sense. But like, even in your circle analogy, where it's middle edge, wrapper, like a fall back down to the another edge, and the breath work does that. And how I end up articulating is like, as whether we're aware of it or not, like our brain and our body are speaking life and death in essence, or sympathetic, parasympathetic. And like, that's in essence the work rest ratio that you're kind of talking about with your circle. But I think the access point, or like if you view it through breath, obviously, like, you can upregulate and downregulate in the same world as the actions of your judo and your family and all those kind of things. You can always I don't know a better way of life to say, but like, yeah, you can always keep pushing into the work phase, but you have the ability to slide back and forth, and the capability gives you the control to enjoy your life, and in essence, same as you said earlier, stay on the edge. And I think it's really cool, just because you're always like, if you're on the edge of this circle, which I'm still wrapping my head around the analogy, but if you're on the edge of the circle, yeah, then you always are on the edge, and you can always dance on the circle accordingly.
So you can the way I'm putting this stuff, like my thoughts over the last particular 20 years or so, and wrap them in, and kind of been able to communicate that. But there's two, I suppose, three models layered on top of the other. One is, if you think of the base of it, is Dr. Serrano will use this a lot. Dr. Eric Serrano, who we both know, he looks at life and 5 parts of life, right? You got God and spirit, you've got personal development, you've got relationships, you've got finance and relationships, finance, God and spirit. What else is he having there? Health and career.
Yeah.
Right. So they're your 5. Yeah. You've been around them longer than I have.
Well, it's just he's dropped it. He's probably dropped it on me hard twice in my life. And Serrano's Big Whiteboard, for those of you listening, Serrano, big whiteboard guy. And it was when I'm really at like the forks in the road of my career, and he'll just like sit me down, and like it'll be both times have been at his office, and he'll like go on the whiteboard and chop up life again. And he goes, you're basically making this decision for yourself. You're making decision about the money. You're not making decision about like what really fulfills you in this realm of this pie of life. But go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. So you take that circle and you make it a wheel, right? And for your life to be moving well, for you to be enjoying your life, that wheel needs to be balanced, right? Otherwise it's going to be all bumpity and rickety, and it's going to hit a bump and crash and burn, right? So then you take that idea and you go, okay, well, if I just push into the edge of career my whole time for 10, 20 years and don't look after the other edges or the other sides of the wheel, well, then I'm going to crash. So now you take that idea and you go, okay, I want to balance out all sides of the wheel, and then make sure they're all nice and broad and strong and resilient and fulfilled, or being fulfilled. Then you layer on top your nervous system, which has 2 sides to it. So think you got one half is the arousal side. So think of splitting this pie now down the middle. and layering this on top, where one half is all go, 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 is energizing, is doing, is arousal, and the other side is rest and recovery and relaxation. So now you got to understand in the nervous system that if you push into arousal the whole time, into stress the whole time, into energy the whole time, that if you do that, you end up moving your center point. You either become adapted and stressed and anxious and even panicked and diseased and hurting and in pain. And that's just a natural state for you because you're pushing into that edge the whole time. So your body also and your mind needs to balance between the two edges of the nervous system as well as a model. And then you layer in something like the breath, which I've just learned because of my own history, and we'll talk about that by all means. But the breath is like the spirit that goes between all edges of both the nervous system and also that circle of life. It interconnects, it weaves between all edges, and it helps make sense of everything. So all of life is reflected in your breath, and then your breath can also reflect all of life. So in other words, if I take a breathing pattern where I'm like, that's a stressful breathing pattern, and it also reflects the way I've lived my life and the edge that I'm on the whole time. Whereas if I do the other, where I'm like completely chilled, completely calm, but I'm enabled to access that big breath, because maybe instead of being chilled and calm, I'm actually depressed. And you'll hear that then in the voice and in the breath and in your posture. Well, that's an edge that I've been sitting on too long, which some people are in. Perhaps people with PTSD or been through trauma or been in high stress, and their nervous system is just bounced that they just don't have the motivation or the drive to live life anymore. So then you got to use a breath then to actually do the opposite and get you back into center. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, perfect. I talk about it in realm of capability, like as far as like violence and peace is big for me.
Beautiful, nice.
But it's that same because peace isn't just like Zen, Buddhism, meditation, and in that realm. It's your ability to have like a conversation. It's the ability to like have boundaries on and protect your mind. And then obviously that gets into the physical side too, where like violence on the extreme end, like you want to be capable of, if when life is crazy or sometimes life demands violence, you want to be capable and prepared. But I think the majority of my world and the breath world is getting people out of this sympathetic side of life and getting them a little more centered with the down regulation. And again, and that leads to, because like breath is peace, like and the violence and peace, like breath gives you the ability to, in essence, what you said is like, I say every breath can help or hurt you. And in that realm, every breath can pull you towards like your center of your circle, or it can pull you too far down or too far up. And if you're not aware of what's going on in your physiology, like you're just going to be a slave to it. And in that essence, like like that conscious awareness, now you can get back in the driving seat. And every human in psychology, like our brains hate uncertainty, and we really crave control. And that's why people hang on to the routine, or people hang on to comforts, because like people aren't scared of the unknown. You can't be scared of something you don't know. You're scared of leaving the known. And that's the problem. And so life gets a little easier to handle when you know you have control over your state. And if you can control and people, again, and you know this with your Dynamite book and all these things, like if you can control your state, you can control your psychology. And that people don't understand how interconnected those are. And so we've lost touch. I coach it as a language. Like our physiology speaking a language to our brainstem, whether we like it or not, but most people don't know the language anymore. And you articulated it beautifully in the realm that the breath is that spirit that's interconnected. It's the ability to take that, because it's with you as long as your heart's beating and you're inhaling and exhaling, like your breath is with you. And we don't even understand. A lot of people, go ahead.
It's a one ring that binds them all.
Yeah.
It literally is. It is the seed of who we are physically in terms of all movement. can be seen in the breath. And it start like if you inhale and just follow that, you're going to follow yourself into extension, into external rotation. That's a natural movement, and it's a single signal from the brain that goes down through the whole body with the inhale. And vice versa with the exhale, it's flexion and internal rotation, right? And supination into it as well, right? It's a closing in of the body, and it's an opening and closing of the whole body. And same with every organ, and same with how your brain thinks as well. And that's just in one breath. Now you extrapolate that out into every breath of every day that's always with you, and you can see how the way you breathe impacts how you live, and how you live impacts every breath.
Yeah, and that's where like everything in life is that always going to be a balance. Like life's too chaotic, and there's too many variables in the system for the perfect amount of balance in that realm. But I think the lowest hanging fruit and the easiest access point, which it sounds like you believe in as well, is the breath. And I think it's just a worthy endeavor in that realm. And obviously people like you are carrying the torch and sharing the good word in that realm. But before we get too far down the breath rabbit hole, because I've talked about it on the pod before, but I can also talk about it for hours on end. Can you just give a little bit of background how you got into the world and where you are now?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I mean, my world has always been tied to it in the sense of from the age of 3 I've had asthma. And that peaked at around the age of 19 or 20 when I was just starting university. And for my whole childhood, I loved sport, fit guy, really active. I was also small, I was thin, I was skinny, and because I was so sick with the asthma. And I've had bouts where I've had, doctors come to me in the middle of the night to administer medication to keep me alive. I've been on medication. I was on medication my whole youth. And it peaked when I was about 19 or 20 when I spent 6 months in bed sick with asthma, with a total of like 3 inhalers a day, over 400 prednisolone steroid tablets in a year, and over 14 courses of antibiotics. It was that bad that eventually it took me about 10 years to actually write my immune system after it. But that's where it peaked. And I went into the docs one day and I was like, oh, look, I was studying computer science at the time and hated that. Which is interesting in itself that I was really sick as I was investing my life in something that I hated. And then I said to him, look, I'm interested in actually becoming a fitness instructor and trainer. What do you think? And the doctors laughed me out of the room. Like he said, genuinely said, we wrap you up in bubble wrap, which is that stuff you wrap when you're moving furniture.
Yep.
We wrap you up in that stuff and put you away till you're 25. We don't know if you're going to get better. There's no hope for you. There's nothing we can do. Nothing else we can do. The one thing he did, he says, look, I'll get you an appointment with a respiratory consultant, one of the best in Ireland, and see how you get on. But lo and behold, the way our medical system worked at the time was it would take me 18 months or over a year to get to see him. So in the meantime, with that year, I just continued on, more medication, more antibiotics, more steroids, until one day my mom picked up the phone and she said, hey, Leo, this breathing method has come from Russia to Ireland. It's just come. The guy that was leading it was McKeown, and he just started up teaching this. He says, would you be interested in it? And I says, yeah, sure, let's do it. And so she got me on a workshop the following week. Literally spent 3 consecutive Monday mornings learning the method, learning the technique, learning how to do the training. And then it was training. It was putting into practice what I learned. And by the time I got to see the respiratory consultant, and I went into him, he says, hey, Leo, what do you want from me? Like, how can I help you? And I was like, actually, things have changed. He was like, yeah. Really? I was like, yeah, I've been doing this method, the Buteyko method. I've, here's a book of my breath training that I've been doing. Here's my lifestyle change. And he says, great. He says, how can I help you? I says, I want to come off my meds. And he was like, sure. Really open-minded. He was like, sure. He says, look, you know your body now. You know how it works. He says, I would suggest you keep an inhaler on you. But gradually take yourself off. And if you get any symptoms, just go back on it, he says. But I'm happy for you to do that. So it was about 18 months from when I visited my GP that by the time I got back to him, 18 months later, I was medication and symptom free. And that kind of set me off on a magical course of, first of all, like physical training, nutrition. I worked for some great people in Ireland. I moved to Canada for a couple of years, worked with some super people there as well, and developed myself too. And I realized back in about 2015, I was like, my clients are missing something. I had this lady who was, for her, she was massively overweight. She weighed, I'm right in around 220 pounds. And I got to convert back because we speak in kilos over here in Ireland. It was about 220 pounds. And she wanted to lose, the guts of about 60 or 80 pounds. And I put in place my normal training stuff. Like, we're like, okay, good resistance training, balance with some light cardio work, lifestyle habits, gradual nutrition habits. So we put in place that stuff over 9 months. And at the end of 9 months, she came to me and we looked at her scores and we're like, okay, bloods were improving, feeling better energy, sleeping a little bit better. But she lost a grand total of 5 pounds. And I was like, something's not working here.
Yeah.
And she was so annoyed. And I said, look, we got 3 choices. I says, we need to get you a sleep test, we need to get bloods done, and we need to look at a psychologist or a life coach for you. And she was like, Leo, you're fired. I was like, oh, great, that didn't work out.
Yeah.
But it was a couple of months later, she picked up the phone and she said, Leo, I got that sleep test that you were talking about, and I can't believe it. Like, it was about 25 pounds that she'd lost in a month after getting the sleep test and realizing she had obstructive sleep apnea. And I was like, whoa, that is so powerful. For those that don't know, if your breath is tied into sleep apnea, like it's one and part of the same, and especially obstructive sleep apnea, it's the start of obstructive sleep apnea. And sleep apnea is where you wake up gasping because you've been holding your breath while you're asleep. And that's really bad for all health conditions. That has a knock-on effect to all cardiovascular disease, even some cancers, diabetes, huge impacts on the body and the mind. But the other side of it is what contributes massively to sleep apnea is general stress, right? So I was like, okay, this girl is so stressed that her sleep was affected, and that was affecting her body's ability to lose weight. And I went, I got to go back and learn what I know to be true, which was the breath. And that kind of set me back. I went back, learned with Patrick, did my diploma with Patrick, went on, he created the Oxygen Advantage method. And I was on his first cohort of instructors there. And when I was in that course, there was these 2 ladies. And for those that don't know, the Oxygen Advantage and Buteyko was all like calm breathing, relaxed breathing, nose breathing, breath holding techniques. It's real chilled. And I was in the course and there was these 2 ladies there and like, oh, we do the Wim Hof method. And I was like, okay, what is that? And I'm like, oh, we're from Amsterdam. And Wim, he's a Dutch guy and he does big breathing. He goes, I was like, wow, what is this stuff? And they're like, yeah, we get in cold water. It's very good. It's very good. I was like, no. And Patrick himself at the time, he was shocked. He was like, what is this crazy stuff? But I just had that inquisitive mind that I was like, oh, I gotta go check this out. And I was looking at the science coming out. They had a study out in 2014, great for inflammation, great for controlling your immune system and your nervous system, great for all these ailments, which actually the Buteyko method said was great for as well. And I was like, hold on a second. One method on one side saying we're great for all these health issues. And then we got another method, the complete opposite on the other side of the coin, going, we're great for all these same issues pretty much. I was like, what is going on here? So it just sent me into a world of discovery about all things breathing, like studied well over 100 different techniques and methods. And it came down to that little poem, which is methods are many, principles are few, methods may change, principles rarely do. And that's kind of what I teach now on breathing. What I discovered in breathing is that it's, if you peel back the techniques and the methods, actually there's principles underneath that. And then if you can apply them to where you are in life, it will work for you every time for every person.
Yeah, and it is a fun world just in that realm, because I mean, I say kind of this weird adage where it's like I can put, it doesn't matter if I put you through the complete wrong breathing method. Like, this is just a saying that I've developed at some time, where you're either going to feel better or different, usually both, just because you have that ability to change your physiology, and it has all these inklings into your feelings, into your thoughts, and those kind of so at least like the breathing. So a lot of times when I get into coaching breathing, particularly for first timers and those kind of things, like, you need to get them feeling and experiencing before they can understand the power. And then now you can educate them nose, mouth, inhale, exhale, like the different cadences and the tempos and the principles that do lie there. And now people can, now it's like, it's nothing in the world's one size fit all, not diet, not your your learning pattern, not whatever. Like, everybody's like, the 2,000 calorie diet doesn't work for everybody needs to figure out the variables of their system and apply accordingly. And I think breath, like just as you said, has that entire spectrum of, again, up regulatory, down regulatory, or arousal and recovery in that realm, sympathetic, parasympathetic. And the Wim Hof world is very up regulatory, arousal based. And you have, but a lot of these same benefits from the down regulation and slow breathing, it's funny how they just show up on both ends. But eventually, like, people can find what works for them, and then like proceed accordingly with the feel that they want, or at least closer to that.
I'd agree with you. I'd agree with everything you're saying, right? But maybe I have a bit of a delicate approach to how I work with people or how I talk. And the reason is because when I went into the Wim Hof now, so I'm an instructor with them as well, and still am. And when I went in there and I was learning all about this world, I went into the holotropic world and rebirthing world and all that world as well. I went talking to all those guys too, and experiencing all their stuff. And actually, it was in a session when might be back maybe late 2015, early 2016, and I heard about holotropic, for example, and I was like, "What is this stuff? Let me go with this." And I couldn't find any information actually for a long time about it, and eventually I found out what it was and what it was all about. And I took myself through a breathwork session, and the first time I did it, I was like, "Whoa, this is just incredible!" Felt amazing, very deep, very trippy, very just felt wonderful from it. So the following week I was like, I give that a shot again. Yeah. And did it again. And I got this voice, this bolt of lightning that says, "Leo, you got to find out what on earth is going on here." It's a bit stronger than that, but what on earth is going on here, and figure it out before you do this again. And I went, well, like, it was like you talking in the room to me. And I was like, whoa, what the hell was that? So that's why I went and started getting certified and talking to experts in the field, because I went to a few breathwork sessions, and like, you're talking about people who had been through deep traumas, who their brain had shut down the very awareness of stuff that had happened to them, and it came out in a breathwork session. And then when I went through my certification, I found that a lot of people were still experiencing that. And I actually was going to walk away from that whole side of breathing. I'm very tempted to walk away, because like, this is not cool. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in here that is not healthy for people and is hurting them rather than helping them. And as I went through that, it was one of my friends, Shireen, she pulled me and says, "Leo, you need to finish. And she stayed with me. And eventually I finished off the certification. And I realized my role, which was, I want to figure out how to help the weakest person in the room. So in other words, how to identify where people are at before they even start breath work, so that then we can dose it accordingly. And there's an old saying from a philosopher called Paraclesis, which is translates basically to, everything is a poison, the dose makes it so. Right? So in other words, everything can harm you or help you. It's just a dose makes it so. For example, like a piece of chocolate, fine. You have a bucket of chocolate, not so fine. Training, brilliant. You smash it, 4 sessions a day for 6 months in a row, not so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even sleep, wonderful. But you're sleeping 16, 18 hours a day, something's up with your internal system as well. So yeah, go on ahead.
No, go ahead, guys. You're good. I love where you're at right now. Go.
Yeah. So what I realize is that there's a power to every technique. And for example, with breathing, the bigger, the faster your breath, the more mouth you use, then the more powerful the technique is on its own. But then you also have to assess where am I relative to the technique? As I said earlier on, am I in an adapted state? Am I in a stressed state? And then I add a big, massive stress on top of that. Well, what's that going to do to me? It's like smashing rock against rock. Eventually, it's going to just break the whole system. Or maybe I should just dose it a little bit better. And maybe I can still do that, but maybe start calm and relaxed and ease myself into it and feel myself into it and use the nose, which is, a slower breath naturally anyway, and then progress through it. And then I can actually play on those edges a lot better for a lot longer. And the guiding rule is what Wim says, which is as long as you feel good, it's all good. If you don't feel good, just back off and pull back from that technique. Whether it is a really arousing technique like Wim, or vice versa, it's something like a really, really strong breath hold that you might do, for example, like a running breath hold in Oxygen Advantage or a free diving technique. Again, if you dose it well and you just start from where you're at and progress it slowly, then it will be a much more enjoyable experience, and you'll actually create that awareness of where your center is much more rapidly.
No, I completely agree, and I didn't want to get misconstrued there earlier. Like obviously in that spectrum, I'd say 90% of what I do is the down regulation side of that.
Yeah,
like
which is gonna be more easier to manage, right?
Yeah, but it's an easier world to assess, and like what you're talking about is part of that is the assessing where a human's at, and then applying the skills, the techniques, or looking at dysfunction prior to that, and then moving forward. But like and I had Brian McKenzie on here a couple episodes ago too, and we had a variant of this same conversation where like the holotropic breathing, the Wim Hof stuff, like that's the shiny part of the world where everybody's gonna initially maybe be pulled into the world for that, but like that's not the sympathetic side of the breathing world that you want to live in, when really like the modern world in this essence like hasn't built us to be optimal breathers right now, and we need to start more in the assessment world and then getting into the practical application, which usually starts in the slower breathing realm. But the reference I was making earlier to where you see benefits on both sides is like now like the slow, like the light breathing. And so I went through the Oxygen Advantage master course or whatever as well. And so in that realm where you get into the light breathing and the slower breathing cadence still shows up in CO2 tolerance, same as the Wim on the extended holds as well. So it just like, it's funny just where the benefits can show up from, again, that functional practice that you're talking about, or just going and completely hard in the paint and trying to hold on after you suppress CO2 with like the Wim Hof method and things like that, where I just think what you're saying and how you said it was awesome and beautiful in that sense, because my coaching perspective on the breath, like I haven't looked at it through your initial definition, but now at the look at the weakest person in the room, that makes a lot of sense to, even when you're relaying a large amount of information to a group or anything like that, that needs to be a fundamental approach to, so because like in essence, like you can't master breathing unless you master breathing at rest, in essence, in that realm too, where the weakest person in the room makes sense to make sure they can work through it and not just throw them in the deep water.
Yeah. And like Brian is a fantastic guy. I met him back in 2017. We were put in touch by a magazine group over in the UK. We Move, who are great guys. They connected us, and they were talking to me, and I was talking all about Buteyko style and Oxygen Advantage style, which is slow breathing and nose breathing and cam breathing. And they had spoken to Brian, and Brian at the time, he had Wim over. He was getting into the realm of the nose breathing, done a lot of yogic stuff, and they paired us together. Just thought, you're from two slightly different worlds. I work with a lot of Gen Pop clients, general population clients, and then some athletes and that end of things, whereas he came from a very, very performance driven background. And it's funny because when we were chatting back then, we were either side of the coin. And at the time, like, I couldn't find conversations with anybody who understood breathing. But Brian and Rob Wilson as well, who was with him, and Brian and Rob and I bounced our ideas off each other, and we had that open mindset about both sides at the time. And he kind of fed through his experiences of the superventilation techniques. And I was feeding through about nose breathing and calm breathing and breath holding. And we both kind of walked away from those conversations that we were having and went exploring it in our own ways with ourselves and with our own clients. And we came back and we're like, it was said in those conversations was that idea that methods are many, principles are few. And that applies directly to breathing as well. And we kind of walk a parallel on either side of the Atlantic Ocean, but walk a parallel, I think, in terms of how we view our perspectives on the breath. And we just teach it different ways. But I think he's a great guy and doing amazing things in the world for breathwork.
Oh, definitely. And I kind of found this in the breath world too, where like everybody, like, even though some people have predominant messages in that realm, where like, I think Brian merges a lot of the worlds, and it sounds like obviously he's collaborated with you as well in that world. And same with like Patrick McKeown and Laird and Gabby at XPT and Dr. Belisa Vranich and all this group. Some people seem like Belisa's a little heavier mechanics and strengthening, where like Patrick McKeown and Oxygen Advantage is more this blood chemistry approach and slow breathing and control and Buteyko. And then now you get a Mackenzie, and Laird and Gabby did all that stuff too, where they merge a little bit of everything. And then you have Wim, where it's like it's not even addressed the other side
breathe,
of the world.
Breathe.
And it's all beautiful, but I like what you're doing and how you're doing it, because particularly with your book too, in that realm, because it breaks down all these three different, really, I mean, you can classify into three different categories, the breath, but as far as like chemical, mechanical, and then we can do psychophysiological, however you want to break down the third category. But then really some of it is just fucking breathe, and feel and go through it and feel like trial and error and whatnot and that kind of world. But and my own mindset, I try and pull from everywhere and understand the underlying principles. So in your world, what do you see as the principles in the breath world that we can start with, just if it's your philosophy or how you just view the world in general?
So what I laid out in the book was, you see, I've been a trainer for 18 years, 20 years, and coaching within that for breathing for about 8 to 10 specifically, where I've just focused in on that stuff. And so what I wanted to do was to lay out for people, this is actually how I view life and how I view how you can see it in your body and in your breath. And that if the body and breath are weak, then everything else is weak. And here's how we start to build your tolerance, build your comfort zone, build your resilience, and build sustainability into your life. Here's how we build it out, and it's through the breath. And then I go into how that looks directly in the breath, right? But if you're asking me what my philosophy is, I suppose I start with nowadays is that almost every human being is weak.
Let's go.
And I'm not talking about weak in terms of my biceps are weak or, I'm fragile in terms of just my mindset, but society is set up to make us weak because stats are we live 93% of our time indoors now, right? We live in houses, we work in offices, we travel in cars, we wrap ourselves up in everything from Under Armour gear and skins to extra coats to hats and scarves and gloves. Our food quality is really poor. Our exercise and movement is really weak compared to what we're made to be. right? So our physical bodies are actually, in the sense of our whole life, are very weak. And that means that we are more sensitive to psychological issues as well. We're more sensitive to fragility. So we've got physical bodies that are weak, that are leading to pain and disease. And we've got our brains, which aren't been fed the right nutrients from the body, which is more fragile. And this is because the setup of our world. And because we decide that and I think it's through society that we decide that we've got to be specialists in one area. I'm a footballer, I'm a trainer, I'm a corporate athlete, I'm a high net worth earner, I'm whatever it is, that we decide that, we need to be the best of the best. And we decide, our relationships don't matter. Our financial health might matter. Like we can survive like this. And we can do that for days, weeks, months, years, even decades. But a lot of my clients that come to me, they used to come in their 50s, then they were coming in their 40s, now they're coming in their 30s, where they are broken. They're either broken physically, and we need to rehab them from a physical point of view, or they're broken mentally and don't know who they are and where they are in the world. And so I kind of start from that starting point, where I'm assuming, even if you don't realize what's going on, but I'm assuming somewhere in you is just physically weak, and I look to build that up. And I build it up through the breath, I build it up through exposure training, I build it up through and that's hot and cold exposure training, and I build it up through physical training as well.
Hell yeah. That's you're speaking my language in that realm. And I got, like, I have a, we'll see how it gets, how it's received, but I got like merchandise and shirts and stuff coming out, and I have like a don't be line, like don't be weak, don't be fat, don't be lazy. Like we'll see how it goes. But in that realm, I'm a big believer in that. And I think it's, I think, yes, like some of our systems not built, like our environment's not built for us to be strong in these categories, because we've accepted all these comforts for compound times, and now like weakness is real. But I also think the human brain and our will and our awareness can always be massively amplified. And the world I'm in right now, because I've been working with more and more military guys in that realm too, like, you don't want to be the liability, you don't want to be weak, obviously, in that world, because like it's life and death in that world. And so like best practices show up there, and guys are like, I think high performance breeds this level of curiosity, where a lot of the best people and competitors right now in the world are assessing their breathing and obviously their body and like their entire skill set in that realm. But and what you're saying as far as like I hate saying Gen Pop, I feel like I'm attacking people, but in that realm, I like the saying, and you've already mentioned poison, which I've brought up on the podcast, whether it was Jordan Peterson's deal, where it's like, you have to choose what poison you're going to take. Everything's poison in that realm. But how I see it is like the antidote is in the poison. And in that realm, and it's very clearly illustrated in the breath world, where the poison in the breath world, we'll call it, is carbon dioxide. But the beauty in that tolerance is that if you again create a better relationship with that chemical, life gets a lot easier. Like, again, the physiology gets a lot easier, and people don't like, and you said it really, really well in that realm, where the fragility and the sensitivity, people don't even know that's going on. And I empathize, and I have the same problems myself in that realm, where we can't see our brain. Like, so we don't know what's really happening there. We can't see the effects of what each bad breath or each weakness that I do carry around holds sometimes, because it's not visual, like you said, like a bicep in that realm. So I think it's really important what the work that you're doing as far as bringing this world into the light, particularly the weakness and how to address it.
Yeah, and by the way, I am referring to high performers as well. Like I do work with high performers, and I'm not saying you can't be a specialist, right? And for those for those guys, for example, in the military who are alpha male type guys, or in sports that are alpha male type sports or alpha female type sports, where it's like, I'm not weak. I'm like, look, this isn't an attack on you. This is just, our human mind, what once helped us to survive life, which was the comforts that we have today, like food and shelter, are now killing us because we've just gone too far over the edge, for want of a better word, right? And I'm also not saying you can't be a specialist. You can be a specialist, absolutely, and be a damn good one. But you also have to pay attention to how that is affecting you over time. And if you find that, the thoughts are becoming, whether it's imposter syndrome, whether it's, heavy on you, whether, they're becoming very negative, or whether your body's breaking in two, you have to listen to those and become aware of them. And then you either give them a little bit of rehab and a little bit of making them better so that you can continue doing the thing you love, or eventually you have to make that transition in life, which everybody makes at different stages of life, no matter who you are. But the beautiful thing about, if you decide to listen to any of Brian's podcasts and take him at his word for the breath is magic, what you will realize that as you train it, that awareness will become natural to you. And you'll become much more aware of how life is affecting you and how you're living it. And then from that position, you can make a choice and go, no, I don't mind. This is the life that I'm living. And because I love it, even if it means that it's breaking me in two, that's cool. That's your life to live. Or you can make the choice that, no, I'm gonna flow with this river here and change the course a little bit and go more with the flow of life. That's your choice too. But the breath, by just simply training your physical breathing, brings that awareness. I mean, every yogi and Buddhist and monk and priest knew about it. You train your breath, it will bring that awareness of how you're living life and how life is living you. And then you have choices. But if you don't, you're kind of experiencing life and don't know what the hell is going on and why you feel that bad and how it's affecting you, and it's everybody else's fault, and I'm just going to battle my way through it, and you end up breaking yourself in two.
Yeah, it's easy to become the victim in that category, and that's why I love the control that like actual awareness of your breath does yield. And it's always kind of funny because it's I think one of a good way to like intro it to some people in that realm is like the consciousness competence scale, where in essence, like most of the time when people haven't heard anything about the breath world, like initially you're unconsciously incompetent and then eventually you educate and now you're consciously incompetent. And the goal through all this, again, it's some things will make sense right away. A lot of the information in the breath work can be relayed really quick, but if you don't approach the fundamentals and the principles and have discipline and consistency, or at least a general awareness to what's changing your state throughout the day or what's defaulting you into mouth breathing, whatever, you won't be able to manage or get the eventual goal of this pyramid in the realm of now. You get into, so you're consciously incompetent, eventually you become consciously competent, and then we get this thrust back into the world of mastery now where it's unconsciously competent. And that realm, like, that makes a lot of sense to me. And again, like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid in this world, but I do think it's important to, because that's every skill on the planet, but now that we've obviously emphasized the importance of breath, it makes sense to get that control, to get that competence, so that eventually, like, this awareness is always there and I can always walk and dance on the edge and find my center. Like, that seems so damn logical in this world now. And how I had a fun conversation with my buddy the other day where, yeah, like it's okay to specialize. It's okay to go hard in the paint and attack things and be one-dimensional for a little while to get success or get separation from the person you are, whatever it ends up being, or get a deeper relationship with your people. It doesn't matter. And I always think, like, the rewind of that, and I talk about it a little bit on the podcast prior to this, but so me and my I don't know if you guys have this carnival game in Ireland, but the squirt gun where the horses race in the background. Yeah. So in essence, like, he sees his world, and we got in this conversation where like you have to maintain, like you have to like your physiology and like your recovery and all these things needs to be one of the horses, is what he was saying. But he's also balancing 3 different businesses. He's still playing football, and then he's got his relationship. So he's like, I'm just always spraying these different horses and making sure we're good and checking it in. He's just tangible. He's using it and tangibilizing it into mental skill. And he goes, and I was telling him about the breath and the recovery and like coaching him in that realm, because I need to add another horse. Breath needs to be another horse. And I go, really, like the breath and your recovery and your sleep and all these things, like that's the water you're spraying with. So if you really want to start to specialize, like this is the foundational principle of, on top of sleep, which again, breath's still there. Same with digestion, same with eating, all these things, breath still there, influencing diaphragm, all these things. And so if you really want, and I always call it a battery, where like if you want a full battery, you need to figure out your sleep and make sure you're waking up at 100%. Same with the breath, needs to be, again, keeping your battery balanced throughout the day and all these things. So I just think it's I love how you articulate it, because it's just sparking all these different conversation points, but also it's making me look at how I even articulate it, because I do really like how you intro the world. And then obviously it just, I know it makes logical sense, and I hope listeners get a lot out of it in that realm too. But did that spark anything with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you were talking about the that analogy there, I like that one. The one I use, which is I so Jill Miller is a yoga instructor, well known over out of New York. She's producing a book on breath as well. And I was chatting to her, and she talks a lot about fascia. She's big into the fascia world, which is the for people that don't know, you don't have really individual muscles in the body. All your individual muscles are connected together by a sheath of tissue called fascia. So if you think of it like links of a sausage, you got your muscles are the meat of a sausage, and then all those individual compartments are joined and linked together to form a link of sausages. And the word she uses, it is fascia is the seam system of your body, like a zipper that closes a seam. It joins everything together in a 3-dimensional way. Well, I actually think the breath is the seam system of your life, like it weaves in and out of absolutely everything. And when you actually train it, when you I call it breath. So I delineate, I go, there's breath work and there's breath training and there's breathing techniques. A breathing technique is great. Let's say 4-6 breathing, or let's say, 1-4-2 ratio breathing, right? That's a technique, which means it will change how you feel in the short run. It's like taking a hit of coffee. It will change how you feel in the short run to change your state of mind temporarily. You have breath work, which is a deep dive into the mind and into you and into how you're feeling. That's like an extended version where you take anything from 10 minutes to 3 hours out of your day to really dive into breath. That's what I consider breath work. And the point of it is to connect with your mind and your spirit. That's the point of that. Then there's breath training. Breath training is about the progressive a progressive system of developing your breathing, your mechanics of how you breathe, and your CO2 tolerance in particular. And so for me, and this is just how I learned it almost through the Buteyko technique, the essence of where you'll get like 90% of the benefits of breathing is in breath training. And when you build your breathing system, when you build your CO2 tolerance and your mechanics that you're breathing well, you get 90% of all the benefits. And then technically, you don't need to do a thing with it. Nothing. Because it will just live with you. And it will work its way through your life. In other words, you'll be on a football field and you'll be breathing out of your ass, and you'll realize, you'll straight away get it because you're so connected to it. You'll be like, okay, I got to downregulate here and take things down because I've trained this. I just need to calm it down. Or you'll be, you'll be wanting pre-competition. You'll be wanting to go into a fight or into a match, and you'll notice that, geez, I'm really chilled out here. Like I actually want to get a bit of energy about me, and so you'll realize that you can upregulate straight away and use a technique that way. But I actually don't think humans, if we were living ancestrally years ago, would ever need to do breath training, because their environment was set up that they had a healthy, strong body. Now, they had other stresses and other things that would kill them, like lions and bears and cliffs and human fights, which is great, right? But essentially, that if we transported that with our modern mind that we have today, I think we'd be very physically resilient and be relatively no issues with your breathing. It'd be fully developed, and it can just kind of dust your hands off and just get on with your day and live in your greatest life. And I think the only reason why we need to breath train is because we're starting from that weakness, that society and the planet just doesn't provide us because of what we've done to it over many millennia.
Yeah, that's a great point, where like I usually preach it and saying like return to nature, or like filter your life as close as you can to nature. And that's getting outside, obviously, like as far as like vision, but like temperature exposure and like the understanding of how that even correlates to your assessment of pain. But also, again, like all this is physiological influences, and I'm not going to rant too heavily on here, but in that realm where it's like now you get into the influence from our infants on up, and you understand how weak the foundation can be from the soft food, the formulas on up, and then like the diet that has influenced all these structures in the system, and even how our cells are adapting in to any glycogen or sugar stores and all these whatever it ends up being. It's just such a foundational flaw in how far we are from nature and what we put into our body, the temperature and environment that we're exposed to. And again, those were the two biggest stressors back in the day. It was literally like food scarcity and environmental stress. And then now we can start worrying about some of the other more esoteric and mental psychological problems. And I look at that and I see so much resilience can be built in that same world. That's why I love the exposure training as well. And because again, it doesn't take a lot of physical exertion, suffering type of concept, the work that some people run from and avoid. You can just sit there in the sauna and like you can have music on, you can reap these benefits of nature, which is just an extreme version of nature, obviously the sauna and those kind of things, same with the ice. But now that again, you have to get people to feel it. And so now they feel it. Okay, I get it. Why? And like, it's just primal. And it's just, sometimes I don't like, I try not to overcoach things sometimes, like just let's breathe, let's get you hot and cold. And you just tell me how you feel. And like, it doesn't have to, it's not rocket surgery. We can proceed accordingly. But I like your stance there as far as those three buckets as well. I haven't heard it put that way yet. And that, I mean, it makes sense, but that is like 90% of the world is like, again, reprogramming this human that's been programmed in the wrong way. And I always think to myself, and I've had this conversation a bunch with people in the business world, or like, sorry, in the breath world, in that realm too, where again, like you dropped the 93% of our time spent inside line, where like I love Michael Easter as well. He's a stud. I hiked with him at one point out in Vegas, but besides the point, he does a good job of illustrating that obviously that weakness and that absorption into I guess our lack of awareness and how comfortable we become, and the importance of, again, not just getting outside, but like getting alone and spending time with ourselves. And like that addresses some of the spiritual and creativity and art side of the world. And damn, I had a point I wanted to make inside of that. But so he's got a new book coming out, and he was going down with a tribe somewhere off the grid, obviously like somebody that's been untouched by like modern society in that realm. Wow. And I wanted to, I was like, can you like, I was like, I nerded out on this because I was super excited. And and I've heard it said, and I'm really just like regurgitating like what other people have said at this point, where it's just like, if we were raised in nature, basically, or raised in this scenario, like we wouldn't need breath training. Or like these people, like some of these people in these tribes, like they run 7 to 10 miles a day hunting and those kind of things. They never leave their mouth. and I've heard, it's just me relaying information, but I would love to see it or have somebody see it in real time where it's like, hey, how are they breathing in these different scenarios? And then I really want to get their blood work done, and I want to know what their hormone levels are, and like whatever deficiencies, or if they're just all just like, oh, they're in nature, and like that is what again keeps them in this incredibly healthy capacity, besides obviously the benefits of modern medicine in some capacities.
Well, that I mean, that's the other side as well. As look, we are living at the edge of life. The leading edge of life is how it was described to me, and I've like, we are at the edge of time as we know it, right? And so it is amazing because we are the point of the spear on all of humanity. And we've done some, regardless how we think, there's some amazing things going on, like the internet, and how we make things and how we design things and how we have navigated the planet Earth. And we're at a stage where I know that there's all the global warming, that side of things, and peace, and there's always stuff going on, but we have forgotten a part of who we are in terms of our society is driven forward so much. And I just think, I don't know, maybe it's from a health sphere, or maybe it's the communities that I mix in, that there's almost, it feels like a time for rebalancing. And you don't have to look at rebalancing the world in terms of, changing the whole world. Literally, it comes back to you and how you live and manage your life. And it starts with like filling your own cup up first. And what I mean by that is building that strength into you and that awareness into you. And the breath, I've just found, is a magnificent tool that's with us all, that we can do that. And then from there, you can have your influence on your communities and broader than that. But to make your point on the tribes, I was actually talking, there was a lady at a workshop that I had at the weekend, and she's big in tech and tech security, and very heavy job. And she came to some of my workshops before, and I hadn't seen her in a while. I was like, how are you doing? She was like, oh yeah, I'm fantastic. What have you been up to? And she goes, actually, I went completely off the grid. I says, no. I says, where'd you go? She said, I went to Africa, and I was with the Masai Mara tribe. And I was like, okay, I thought I heard of them. I was like, what are they all about? And she goes, oh, like, it's completely like complete poverty, complete living, like nomadic lifestyle. She goes, I says, are they the ones that dance? And she goes, yeah. So they're dancing, and a part of the rituals is like jumping. And you'll see them if you look at them on YouTube, that they're jumping, and these guys can jump really, really high in the sky. And she's like, oh yeah, like even their 2-year-olds are doing it. And she goes, the women don't do it; they do a different form of dance, but it's the men, they do it. And I was like, oh, why? Like, what is it that the men do? And she goes, because their initiation from being a boy into a man, they have to kill a lion. And she goes, the reason why they dance like that from the age of 2 is so that they can jump over a lion in case they need to. I was like, oh man, no way. She goes, and at the same time, she goes, they still have women dying in childbirth. They have really high rates of women dying in childbirth just because the modern medicine isn't there. I was like, wow, like that would be a shocker to your system to see like that side of life and experience that side of life. It must be just wow, just mind-blowing, I'd say.
Yeah, but I think that like even that story, but obviously that experience for her, and like the secondhand experience of like being to ask those people questions, I think is obviously it expands perspective. And that's why
that's where humans came from, right? That's where we all came from.
Yeah, and I always call us an ignorant species in that realm, where we think we can have eternal daylight, and we think we can be this comfortable for like 70-degree bubble for our entire life and all these things, because we can, but like that's not what the human body was meant for. And I've been on a kind of a on and off rant on the podcast here, where I think we need to create a whole new perspective. And you said it beautifully too. I'm just saying it in a different way, is where it's like the Dopamine Nation deal, where this is where I got the line from, then I've expanded upon it, where it's like we need to treat pain with pain these days. And nobody wants to hear that. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news in that realm, but like we need to get a new relationship with pain, suffering, and I'm saying good versions of this. It sounds aggressive, pain and suffering, but CO2 tolerance, training, again, the suffering of learning and expanding perspective, or sitting with yourself, that open up your awareness on how
the suffering is sitting in still, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's suffering too. It's so that you're not triggered and you can understand yourself that, oh, part of this violence peace spectrum is, can I have an open-minded conversation and not get triggered and have my identity be attacked? So I attack back and I get defensive and I spread more hate in the world, and nobody wants that. And so, like, how I view it is like in the same realm of your story, the pendulum needs to swing back. Now, I'm not saying we don't need to swing back to tribes and lions, but we need to get a little closer and in touch with that, again, that breath of life and or the way of living that, again, what we were built for. And for some people, like, letting go of things and not buying all the things is painful, and having to sit with yourself and figure out what that is, I think is, again, it's just a worthy endeavor. And I'm ranting now, but in that realm, I think that that story is awesome. And that, again, it just irks me I want to know how their physiology,
you want to know what it's like.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, it's a fun world. You want to hype up the book?
It's not out yet. It is.
So
it's coming out. I mean, we're if you don't mind me saying, we're recording this in January 23, yep. And I would hope that it's out in 3 months.
Awesome.
That will be. I've just got it I literally sent it to the editor for a final edit yesterday, which means they'll return back. Then it's book design and cover design. Which, by the way, I don't have a clue how I'm gonna achieve. I'm gonna have to manifest that one somehow.
Yeah,
because I'm all loaned out, and so if anybody is a good book designer and cover designer, hit me up, right?
Yeah, perfect.
And then I'm gonna self-publish it and throw it on Amazon too, and it should be. I would like to have it done in 3 months. Feels real good to me, and I think that's when it's going to be out by for sure. Title of it is Breathe Free. Breathe Free is the main title of it. So I'm really looking forward to getting that done and kind of get out promoting it and talking to people. I haven't been out as much, doing workshops and meeting groups and meeting people, and that's what I want to do, because it's kind of funnels everything into that, because it gives me something to talk about.
Oh, no doubt. And again, you're spreading the good word, the gospel according to Leo in that realm. But it's just but in general, so like just the book itself, it's very comprehensive, but it looks like it reads incredible. I think for those of you listening, Dr. Serrano is a mutual friend of ours, and they've been talking on the breath in that realm, and I got a peek at some of it, and it just, the logic of some of the images and the flow of like the chapters, that like the front, like whatever the outline is the most logical I've seen and comprehensive I've seen. How long is the book right now?
115,000 words.
Yeah, I thought.
No, in terms of pages, I don't know what that means, because
I'm trying to think. I think it was like 300 something.
Now the version you saw, I did massively. Do you know what? From where you saw to where it is now, I'm just so much happier. I found my voice in it even more clearly, and refined it down, and I have some cool, I think, images and stuff that help people. I want to put out videos with it, so like, in and of itself, you can start from the very beginning and take yourself right the way through breathing and not need anything else. Like, it's based on my coaching as well as my knowledge, and I want people to be able to progress their way through it. So yeah, it's my lifetime's work on the breath kind of synthesized into it, and I don't think there's anything out there like it, and that's why I wrote it as well. Was because it has that coaching element to it, that kind of life story element to it, that relatability that hopefully I can communicate in it.
Yeah, no, again, I've flipped through Doc's iPad really quick, because he got excited when well, he's just been a mentor for me in general, and he's always my backboard to bounce things off of in that realm. And he goes, you need to talk to Leo. And he goes, it's the best breath book I've read. And I go, feed me. And he but it's true. Like a lot of the, I mean, you can look at the books on the breath world, and like, okay, I love Oxygen Advantage. Yeah, a great intro to the chemistry and the first exercises that have a lot of the fundamentals in it, where like you can get a lot out of it. Dr. Belisa's Breathing for Warriors, mechanics and athletes, go. Like there, it talks about running, it talks about lifting, talks about strengthening. Another mechanic, like again, another compound. And then you like Unbreakable Runner by Mackenzie, a little bit, that's pretty specialized. The anatomy of breathing, or anatomy of the breath, very technical. It's all anatomy and again, more mechanical memorization in that realm for me, but like nothing's really brought it all together. And I think your book does that really well. And it storytells, like from what I saw in that realm. And I think one of the most powerful deals to get the breath across, but anything across, is the ability to storytell and relate and merge like all these little nuances in the breath with one story. And anyways, I'm hyped for your book, Breathe Free, hopefully out here in the next couple months, everybody. But where can everybody else find you as we wrap it up? Then I got one more question for you.
Yeah, the website is innatestrength.com. So innate-strength.com. You'll find all my stuff there, workshops, online programs, a whole lot there. So, and then socials, Innate Strength as well. You'll get it in Instagram, or I am Leo Daniel, just for me specific. I got a couple of guys working with me now, and they're coaches. They're kind of young coaches that are coming on board, which I love, because they will give people the perspective of like the beginner's perspective. Sometimes it's hard to communicate that when you're 18 or 20 years at something. Sometimes you need people coming in at a much earlier stage to be able to communicate across. So you'll find me on both those.
Yeah, then we'll tag you and we'll link the website and all those things here in the bio as well for everybody. But yeah, I think that's a great point too, in the realm where because I always kind of feel like I fall in my own echo chamber in some of the stuff, but I also like I've observed it in the NFL and other teams where you can't just have the 10-year, $20 million veterans on the team. Like you need people on these stepping stones to articulate and relate to people that are just getting into it, or it's same as jujitsu or judo in your world, where, okay, yeah, we need some blue belts in here between the white and the black belts, and like, or whatever it ends up being. And that bridges the community together. And also it just gives a more full spectrum of perspective on the information, where it's just like, oh yeah, I started here and I did this, and everybody's different anyway. So you, again, I think it's cool that like that's grown into that for you. Then, last question, the best advice that you have to give, or that you've been given, does that anything ring true there?
I would say move your body to change your mind. That's the best practical advice I can give. Is you want to better your life, move your body any which way, by breathing, by human movement, by shivering. Yeah. just move your body, and that'll change your mind. Yeah,
dude, that's perfect. Yeah, I love that philosophy. But Leo, man, thank you so much for your time. Sorry it took me a little bit to get going there, but
my pleasure.
Did beautiful conversation. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Brian.
Yeah, be well, brother.